It was around the 8-hour mark of playing Eastward that I asked myself a pretty simple question. Why did I love this so much? The game had hours of unskippable dialogue, and the gameplay was really basic, and even almost 10 hours in, I still had no idea what was going on, and that's when it hit me. Eastward is unpredictable. I didn't know what was going to happen next, and even when I tried to figure it out, I was always wrong. And so eventually I just stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped playing it the way that I play other games. I decided to just let Eastward be whatever it was. And in the end, I ended up falling in love with it. Whether or not you'll fall in love with it, that's a different question entirely. Alright, full transparency time. Eastward is a weird video game. It's about John and Sam and their journey together. Even though he doesn't speak, John is very protective of Sam and cares about her a lot. His skill with the frying pan is useful for both cooking delicious food or beating shit to death, quite literally. Meanwhile, Sam is one of the more memorable characters I've ever experienced in gaming. She's far more than meets the eye. A little girl that's undeterred from the woes of the world. She's optimistic to a dangerous fault, but her growth as a person is a joy to witness here. If someone plays through this entire game and doesn't smile at the mere mention of Sam's name, my only guess is they have no heart. So John and Sam go on this grand adventure, exploring all kinds of places like the seedy underbelly of Potcrock Isle, the lovely village of Greenberg filled with simple folk looking for friendship and love, New Dam City cramped with countless characters like a talkative ghost, a disgruntled casino owner, and a band of carny outcasts. Oh, and also this guy. He's in the game, and his name is Big Jaw. But I call him Bigsack because I'm a child. As you have probably noticed at this point, Eastward is also gorgeous every step of the way, with areas that feel so detailed as to almost seem cramped at times, which is fitting because the world itself is clearly in shambles, with few things holding it together. Every time I entered a new area, I couldn't help but be impressed with all of the tiny things that added to the environment that made it all feel so alive. Some might consider this to be an example of over-design, but I personally thought all of the excess on display added to the experience of discovery. And discovery really is the name of the game here, whether you're finding treasure in the side of a wall in a dungeon somewhere, or you run across someone in the middle of town and just talk to them because they're interesting to listen to. The larger plot point of Eastward doesn't even reveal itself until after the halfway point in the game, which might sound bizarre until you remember how I started this review. Eastward is a very weird video game. Now, if I were to write a bullet point list of all the reasons I love Eastward, somebody else could easily take that same bullet pointed list and tell you that those are the reasons they think it's the most boring game in the fucking universe. I found a Reddit post while I was writing this script, and it simply stated, "I'm about 8 hours into Eastward. Does it get good soon?" I have bad news for this person. It won't. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't that a weird thing to say? I thought you loved the game. Didn't you say you fell in love with the game just earlier in this same review? Well, yes, but let me try to use a comparison in order to explain what I mean when I say the game's not going to get good, because the game just is good. So to illustrate this, I want to use two examples. One from the 2018 game God of War, and another from Final Fantasy VII. After just a couple of hours of hunting deer with your son, this shit happens in God of War.
Any of this?
It's so fucking cool. And because I'll take any excuse to look at Final Fantasy VII, here's Fiery Boy Sephiroth. Now, Contrast those two moments with what, I'm not kidding you, was a massive highlight for me when playing Eastward. Sam got new shoes, and it's adorable. And I love it so much. Now, I'm not trying to be clever or coy here. I mean it, that in the context of Eastward, that moment is on par with the ones mentioned in God of War and Final Fantasy VII. And this is where that Reddit guy comes in, because all of it is by design. Eastward is about the moment-to-moment simple things that happen. It's about going on a search for the golden snapper so you can make the greatest meal ever. It's about helping a panicked dock worker figure out what happened to the crab delivery this morning. Eastward is all the little things that build up to a climax that happens 15 to 25 hours in rather than minutes in. And that's different. It's unorthodox. Honestly, it's just kind of unheard of. See, the journey itself is the good part of Eastward. This is the kind of game that makes me want to tell my friends about the Sonic Punk and how adorable it is that Sam calls him Mr. the Sonic Punk. There is no deeper meaning to why I love that. I just love it because the game is so fucking adorable, and I wanted to keep playing it and keep seeing what it had in store because it just brought me joy. Which is where the pacing might be a problem for you. It might not be. If you're like me and you don't mind 45 minutes of cutscenes where nothing really happens in the grand scheme of things, there is no major plot reveal, there is no storyline that's being pushed forward and a big revelation happening every 15 minutes, but is instead funny and charming and just enjoyable, well, then you're probably going to get a lot out of this. But if that kind of thing doesn't sound good to you, that's mostly what this is, so you should probably stay away. However, if you stick around, the game is actually really fun to play, and the gameplay, while pretty simple, is solid for the most part. Full transparency, the gameplay in Eastward is fine. It isn't going to blow anyone away, and it won't be winning any awards, but it's fun. It's fair, consistent, and occasionally challenging enough to keep you on your toes. While I never died, I certainly came close a handful of times when I let my guard down. The vast majority of the game is going to see you controlling both John and Sam with the ability to split them up whenever you need to. Both of them have their own set of useful abilities. Sam has a weird bubble attack that illuminates everything around it, activates glowing mushrooms, stuns enemies, and it acts as a key when opening ancient doors. She also has some pretty neat hidden abilities that I'm not going to spoil here because you have to explore in order to find them, with most being optional. John, as mentioned, hits shit with a frying pan most of the time, which absolutely rules, but he also has bombs, a gun, and some other neat stuff at his disposal that you unlock throughout the game. Everything here is snappy and responsive, with enemy behavior being fair and consistent. I was surprised at the amount of variety the game created among its limited amount of enemies, but most of their behavior boils down to them charging at you in some way and you just needing to dodge out of the way and then hit them back. It may all sound really simple on paper, but I found it enjoyable for the length of the experience. The puzzles are really simple, with only a couple of them stumping me. I always found my way to a logical solution without the use of a guide, though. I don't consider myself the smartest guy in the world when it comes to puzzles, so I think it's safe to say most folks are going to be just fine here. The game does make very clever use of a simple system that separates the control of John and Sam, with both of them typically clearing a path for the other by using different skill sets. Nothing revolutionary, but it was always fun to figure out the right path forward, even if it was pretty obvious most of the time. You have a pretty fun mini game in the way of cooking food, which you'll want to do whenever possible because the buffs they give will make most boss fights much easier. There are also heart pieces to collect, a la Zelda, 2 kinds of upgrade materials for improving your equipment, a variety of ingredients to collect for recipes, and, well, that's pretty much it. If I were to hazard a guess, the combat, puzzle, and cooking elements make up about 35% of the experience, with the rest of it being all that dialogue that I was talking about earlier. So just keep that in mind if any of the gameplay stuff here seems right up your alley, because you may not be doing it as often as you might think. That doesn't mean Eastward is without its problems. In combat, I found it really irritating that the person following you around was still susceptible to damage. Oftentimes, I would dodge an enemy's attack just for them to get hit instead, because they would go where I just was. It never felt tactical and honestly was more annoying to me than anything. Those annoyances carry over into the menu, unfortunately. The cursor is just a little too light, and it blends in with the rest of the UI, making it easy to get lost whenever you initially open up your inventory. That problem persists when the cursor only makes confirmation sounds on certain things, but then is completely silent on other things. There's also just too many confirmations in general, leading everything to feeling a bit clunky. Even after 25 plus hours of playing Eastward, I never got used to the inventory management in this game. Maybe it's a me problem, but it certainly feels like there are some things that could be improved here. And the last thing is that this game is in desperate need of a traditional weapon wheel. John has a lot that he can do by the end of the game, and just in this one room alone, look at how many times I'm switching back and forth, and believe me when I say the little menu that lets you do it does not work nearly well enough. With the exception of a less than stellar stealth sequence at the end of the game, that's pretty much the end of my complaints with it. So, an odd cursor in the menu, some weird movement, and a weapon selection system that is less than great, those are not deal breakers, at least not in my opinion. Look, if the game seems like something you would enjoy, you're probably right, so you should just stop watching this and go play it. Well, don't stop watching yet. I have to get to my summary, so. I want to begin my final thoughts with an important clarification around Eastward's pacing. It might take a long time to get going, but that doesn't mean it isn't going somewhere. Eastward's final act is as well executed to me as the final act of Nier Automata or Celeste. That doesn't mean it left as big of an impact on me as a person, because it certainly didn't. I simply think they executed brilliantly, maybe to the best of their ability, when it came to wrapping up an experience as unorthodox and strange as Eastward was. And I think it's telling that I didn't mention a single person in this entire review outside of John and Sam, because I don't want to ruin any of them. I want everything to be a surprise for you if you decide to play this game. Not that most of the surprises are earth-shattering, but that all of them are a joy. It's just a joy. The game is just so fucking joyful. I love it. I don't know. I just love this game. And honestly, that's it. If it seems like your shit, you should go play it, because it's great. If it doesn't, you should really stay far, far away. Hey, if you liked this video, go check out the rest of our content over at SuperOKpodcast.com. And from everyone over here at SuperOK, I hope you have a super okay day. Thanks for watching.